Every time that Yeezy called the truce, he had my head inflated, thinking we gonna finally piece it up and get to levitating. Levitating. Lift yourself. I remember lift yourself, lift yourself. The Kanye West beat that was supposed to go to Drake, that Kanye ended up using and pretty much was trolling on. Poop did he scoop? Scoop did he poop? Yeah, okay, that. Oh, I just made the whole connection. In 2025, I want to be more proactive instead of reactive. There's nothing wrong with reacting. There's good reactions out there. I want to be more proactive. Like right now, I want to give you the HQ theory about the relationship with Kanye West and Drake, and thoughts that I've had in my mind that some of y'all might have had as well. And how this interesting relationship, I think, can speak to a lot about how Drake is who he is now, and speak a lot to how come the audience is much more willing to accept this guy when this guy learned most of his tricks from this guy. Let's get into it then, right? Drake understands who his master is, right? His mentor is. He always says it, at least in vocal, he vocalizes that Lil Wayne is the master of who brought him into rap. But the reality is he also has these other few people that he learned from and looked up to. But I think at one point wanted to detach from treating them as masters. One of the first laws of 48 Laws of Power. I know people tell you they laugh at you. Oh, don't read that. That book is, listen, you can use this joint in corporate. All right. Okay. Don't try to use it and get love life and nothing like that. The very first law is never outshine the master, right? Always make those above you feel completely superior. Right. Now, I think Drake understands that rule. Hey, he has a lyric, read 48 Laws if you never read it. That's one of the main reasons I'm level-headed. I remember that song, Old Drake. But he understands that rule. And I think he applies it pretty well with Lil Wayne, at least, publicly speaking. But the problem is, he tried to apply it with Kanye. He tries to apply it with Jay-Z. Another one, he has a line about saying, hey, I never cried when Pac died, but I probably will when Hov does, right? But how do you keep growing with these guys who don't have you on contract or didn't have you on contract and still treating them like your master after you've surpassed them, right? I mean, just read this quote from Drake, right? Before I ever got a chance to meet him, Kanye West shaped a lot of what I do as far as music goes, right? We always took the time to listen to Kanye's music, right? I mean, keep reading this. He knows how to recognize great music as not his. He knows how to utilize great sounds and great music. Remember that part. So before I met him, I had the utmost respect for Kanye West. I'd even go as saying he's the most influential person as far as a musician that I've ever had in my life. So the respect was there. It was always there. And when you have that type of respect, you're most likely going to try to mimic people. So I want to talk about three things, right? These guys, I think they share. Talk about their relationship as well, but talk about three things that I think they sort of do similarly. But with the rap culture, hip hop, all of America doesn't judge them the same. It's not making an excuse for Kanye or making an excuse for Drake. It's not giving anyone a pass, but it's just a thing in my head that says, I think a lot of how he behaves is also because he's mimicking him, but he's also wants to do better than him. And he also is kind of scarred like a little boy. He always looked up to someone that let them down, right? And those three things, number one, is in their approach to sounds, their approach to music, right? Early on, remember, Kanye West produced Find Your Love for Drake, right? There were speculations that Kanye was trying to sabotage Drake's first album, right? First project, that the beat wasn't great. And then there were issues with the video and blah, blah, blah. I mean, it was really for Rihanna, and that maybe that wasn't the right presentation to show the world about Drake, especially after you already just did Best I Ever Had, right? Maybe go another approach. But anyway, Drake took to it. Drake did it, Find Your Love. It worked for as much as a single could work, right, in that era. But the thing about it is, I'm thinking as Drake is watching this, he's learning. He's learning the moves with Kanye. Like, oh, okay, you're going to put your arm around me, but you'll get more cachet and etc. But then as that's happening, he's learned how to outmaster Kanye, because in 2013, now Drake's years in the game, Kanye said this. He talks about the tipping point in their relationship, right? He said, I was fine with writing Find Your Love with Drake on his first thing until he got too big. What? Here's the thing, all throughout that, he was learning, oh, okay, you take a collaborative approach to music. Okay, you try something now, but what do you really do, right? Okay, you work with writers. Oh, okay, you find the best sounds. But I think though Drake might have learned that and figured out that this was the best way to go about music, here goes that slight difference again, not to give Kanye a cop-out, but to help Drake understand, or any Drake fan understand, why it's not received the same way, because even Drake has written for Kanye West. And that is, at its core, we've looked at Kanye as a producer mostly. The human brain can compartmentalize that. We know that he's not in competition to be a Jay-Z or Biggie the way he wants to, right? So when I say, you understand what I'm saying? He said, I want to be the best musician ever, right? Kind of thing. Whereas the human brain just keeps compartmentalizing Drake as a rapper, but singer, but what are you, right? When you look at 808 and Heartbreaks, that births Drake. That's the school, right? So when he goes, oh, one of my musical masters can use writers, well, I guess I can too, right? But it's not received the same. The second thing I want to talk about is the sort of current way of moving with, I guess the word is impunity, right? Like some people might say Kanye had a right-wing grift. Remember what Kanye said about slavery, right? And they say, well, it's because similar to Drake. Remember Drake's walking around, on a Family Matters record saying, oh, you always rapping like trying to get the slaves free. Not received well, right? But there are two differences here, right? And that's going to lead me to my third point. I think, number one, the mental health portion has to be mentioned with Kanye West. It's important. And Kanye is more outwardly vocal and it seems like he's standing on it. Whereas Drake, although learned from Kanye, moves with somewhat of like this veiled, secretive way of doing it. Kanye would get on Twitter and tweet away. It's an episode, right? Whereas we hear about Drake's, right? And then, but the thing with that is, so you take the mental health, you take the style of in which they do, what is to me is pretty similar. If Kanye's not worse, we could argue that. And we talk about the cultural cachet. And that part is very important because, again, culturally, there's an argument to be made that Kanye West's life is closer to Drake than it is a Jay-Z. And what I mean by that, right? In terms of being on the street corners, even Kanye's mentioned himself being a backpack rap and stuff like that. He's not that close to Jay-Z. He lived a life in which his mom was an educator. You know whose mom also was an educator? This guy, right? You know who spent time in China, while his mom was teaching English in China? This guy, getting that international influence, right? But there are subtle differences, major differences you want to call them. Obviously, this guy grew up in Chicago, the hub of rich Black American history and culture, whereas this guy grew up in Canada. This guy's biracial. So those things matter. But the cultural cachet really, though, is what really sort of makes them a little different, because the cachet he has is that from the beginning of College Dropout to about graduation, his music was filled with songs that Black America and hip hop itself could hold on and harp to, that spoke to us, right? Whereas a lot of Drake's music, although it was a big part of the, people's lives, spoke more to love, and love can be universal, right? And that's a beautiful thing about love. A 17-year-old white girl from Idaho can relate to Marvin's Room. How much can she really relate to Diamonds in Sierra Leone? You understand? Bit of a different context there, right? So that cultural cachet is that. Now, let's talk about, if you're copying him, but you can't always get away with all his crimes, how do we even get here where you guys don't get along? Because the best person that would help you navigate through this thing would be him. Well, we track it, right? And that's how we're going to close this out. We track the Find Your Love video. I mean, there's so many things I'm going to miss here, right? We go to the Lift Yourself at the end, but then we track little things. And I'm looking at my notes for this one because it's long. I don't know where to start, right? You go the part where Big Sean says they had an issue with turning the verses in for Blessing because Big Sean felt like Kanye was choosing Drake over him, right? You go through the whole 2016 era of the Watch Your Throne subs because Kanye and Drake were going to work on a joint album, but then Kanye's doing it with, Jay-Z. And then there's the pop style, writing on 30 hours. Then you go to the Khaled sub in 2017, where he's pretty much accusing Drake and Khaled of payola. And Drake says, well, I don't get it. We're supposed to be doing a joint album, and now you're taking shots at me. And then it gets really, really nasty in 2018. And I feel like that is also what forced this guy to be just a little more cutthroat, just a little more, right? Because you get the Pusha T stuff, and Drake says, no, I told you about my kid, and all of a sudden I'm beefing with Pusha T, and why are we even in the same building as this guy? And then Pusha T knows about my kid, so I'm gonna go to the Sicko Mode subs, and then it goes on, and then the Hoover concert, we piece it up, and then right before I'm gonna engage in full-out war with Kendrick, you let it slip that is an elimination of Drake happening. That's the HQ theory. I understand it now.